Okay, in the part 1 video, we just finished setting up this basic flat list, and we can see our code displayed here. When we click on the items, we log the item, but that is really boring. We don't have any styles for how this looks, and we want to change that. So let's go down to our styles, and let's just make some quick styles that are going to say, for example, we can say, I don't know, row container, and we can say row text. And again, you can call these whatever you want. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add them on here so that way I can see them as I code it. So I can see how those changes are happening. All right, so first of all, I'm going to make this container have a little bit of size. So I'm going to make the height, we'll say 40. And for the width, I'm going to make it, we'll go with 80% of the screen. And I want to be able to see it. So I'm going to do a background color. For right now, I'm just going to do light blue. All right, so now I can see how those containers are. Now, you're going to notice that this width of 80% is because it is 80% of its parent, and its parent is only as big as FlatList Basic. So that didn't work how I wanted it to. So instead, I'm going to make it a wider one, and now I can see it's wider. Also, I want to have a little bit of space in between these. So if I were to give this a margin bottom of, say, 10, now I'm going to see some space in between each of those rows. And then I'm going to adjust my text and change my font size. We'll go with, I don't know, 15. And I also want to have some spacing against the edge. I don't want it to be like that. So on my container, I'm going to add some padding, and we'll go with a padding of 10. And all right, I'm happy with how that looks for right now. It gets the job done. All right, so one of the things that I want to show you how to do is how to make a variable to keep track of what is being selected. So what we're going to do is up here where we have our other variable, we are going to make a state variable called selected ID. So we'll say const, and we'll say selected ID, and then its update function will be called set selected ID. And then in order to use this, we're going to have to use useState, and we're going to need to import useState. And then it's going to be of type string, and then our default value will be 1 because that will give us the first value. And then verify that useState was imported, and it was. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to add a little bit of conditional styling here. So for right now, the style for my view container is always the same, but I want to adjust it. I want to make it so that if this row that we're on happens to be the same ID number as the selected ID number, I want the background color to look different. And I'm also going to utilize these colors that I have in my document. So I have a flat list background selected and not selected color, and selected and not selected text. So those are the ones that I'm going to use here. So let me go ahead and we'll get the styling in here, and then we can walk through all of it. All right, so I went ahead and I did a few changes here. So for starters, I imported the colors file so that I could use those colors I was just showing. And then I went ahead and made changes to my style for the view and the text. So the way that these are set up, first of all, I have an array, and the array of styles makes it so that it first applies the row container styles, and then I'm having another style that goes after it. And the style for after it is the background color. And the way that this is working is the background color is going to do this comparison. So if the ID of the item I'm showing is equal to the selected ID, then I will have the background color be equal to the selected FlatList background color. Else, it will be equal to the not selected background color. And the same logic is true for my text. So the color of the text is going to be dependent upon this, selection. Now, if I look at my flat list over here on the side, you'll notice that the first item is applying that setting. But when I click on them, nothing is changing. And there's a couple reasons for that, but the most common reason is because I forgot to tell it to do it. And so now I need to adjust my on press. And so my onPress needs to go ahead and it needs to change this selected item. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another function that will allow that I'll call whenever I select an item. So I'm going to say const selected list equals, and then this is our normal syntax that we see for a function. However, I need to be able to pass this function something. So I'm going to pass it the item. And again, it is of type data type. And then what I'm going to do in here, I can still log my item title. So I can still do console.log item.title. And that's all well and good, but I also want to call set selected item ID. So now what I want to do is I want to not only log it, but I also want to call set selected ID, and I want to pass it item.id. And so what that's going to do is that's going to update this variable to be equal to the ID of whatever I have selected. So now when I click on it, I'm still not seeing anything change. And the reason why is because I need to add one more attribute to my flat list. I need to add the property for extra data. Now, you can put these props in any order. I personally like to keep the render item one at the very end because the syntax is so much more complicated. So now when I save this and I click on these, all right, so in order to have that method actually get called, we have to call it in the onPress. Now, the syntax that we're going to use here, we can't just put the function name because there happens to be a parameter for it. So we have to say that I want to pass in selected list and I want to send it item. And now when I save this and I click on these items, I will see the coloring change. All right, the last part that we need to learn how to do is the item list separator.